Good morning. So, the cat distribution system of the world has saw fit to double its efforts to give us cats yesterday. Now we have two feline friends that my wife was able to grab from a litter that was in our bush near our gazebo in the back. And we need to get animal control out here because we've got some breeding cats, and I don't want them to breed themselves into a overpopulation and get starving and eaten and all that. But we now have two little furry friends on a temporary basis, but there's nothing more permanent than a temporary institution, right? So we'll see. I'll probably show them off when they're not like they are. Like, we just fed them this morning, and now they're like, we want to get out and explore. Ah! So they're like trying to get out everywhere, all over the place. And yesterday when I had them in this room, my daughter put one down, and I told her not to because they would find some little hole somewhere and just dig in, and that's exactly what happened. One crawled right underneath my little bookshelf. It has like that much of a gap, but little kittens love that much of a gap, and just, and then he was all like, poof, poof, poof. Really didn't want to be extricated, but thankfully my son and I were able to work together and get him out from under there. But yeah, I'm sure more to come on that, but in some ways I think it's a good thing. All my major traveling is for this year is done until next year, and they'll be big enough to be homebound by the time that we go do more traveling next year. And we'll have friends and neighbors help out because get their help with helping out with our chickens. They're cute. They're little mongrels, and that's there's a meme online about how dog owners are like, yeah, I prepared for months to adopt. I went to a breeder and made sure I got Lord Fluffington III. And then cat owners are like, I found him near the trash. And I'm like, yeah, well, we found ours in a bush. So, and which is funny is because my wife has already decided that she'll name them after the characters I was talking about last time from Apothecary Diaries. The apothecary girl, her name is Mau Mau, which is also if you can't tell, Mau Mau sounds like cat's meow, because she's kind of a contrarian girl and headstrong, and so she's off-putting like a cat. And so one is called Mau Mau, and then the other main character, the love interest prince, is named Jinshi. And so we've taken to calling them that. We'll see. We'll see. But by we'll see, what I mean is we're probably keeping them, and we'll have to see about how to take care of them. But there you go. The cat distribution system is finally caught up. And if you don't know what the cat distribution system is, it's a beautiful meme that you can find online, and I don't see anything that should preclude you from going and seeing it. But you came here to learn about big filthy giants from last time. Big filthy giants. God. The Satan's tirade from Livre de Adam, talking about who's greater than me, who's more excellent and more powerful, who can overcome me. Let him draw near, and I will arise. I will fight him, and he will see the strength there is in me. Especially when he was talking about, we can stop the Savior from coming. Just make sure that we abort all children and give sterilization out. And yeah, that's freaky how well that was working. And now, on to this chapter. Big Filthy Giants, the BFGs. See what he did there? See what he did there? All right. Revisiting that weird statement in Genesis is a little easier with context. There were giants in the earth in those days. Genesis 6:4. Ancient cultures didn't view giants like we do today. St. Clement thought our idea of giants was pagan nonsense, saying that these were dudes whom they afterward called giants, not those dragon-footed giants who waged war against God, as those blasphemous myths of the Greeks do sing, but wild in manners and greater than men in size. That comes from Clement Homilies. Giant simply meant mighty and bad-mannered. Even the word giant comes from the Greek gigantes, meaning born of earth, which is exactly what these offspring were. Instead of being born in the holy mountain from the sons of heaven, they were bastard children of adultery and sin. This leads us back to the beginning. This entire rabbit hole began with the word giants from Genesis, and Joseph's inspired re-rendering of Genesis. The word for giants in Hebrew is actually Nephilim, which has multiple meanings, and Dr. James Scott from Trinity Western University explains that, quote, the word plays on orthographically similar Hebrew terms, the Nephilim, giants, of Genesis 6:4, came to be understood in Jewish text as fallen ones, to fall, and abortions. Oh, interesting. Because in the middle of the the Hebrew word, you have an aleph, and then, God, I wish I remembered what each letter was called. But it's the center is the same, and depending on the vowel dots that you put under it, you get the difference of the fall, to fall, and abortion, because those center three. Let me show you. I don't know how well this will translate on screen, but we're looking at that, and that, and you'll notice that the center of it all is those three letters. And the vowel dots make the word. And remember, they didn't have vowel dots in original Hebrew. Vowel dots are a modern thing when they resurrected the Hebrew language to make sure that you had individualized words. And so, giants, the center of it all, is literally has the fall and abortions part of it. The next is playing a game with the reader, like Hebrew texts frequently do. The Nephilim is a pivot point, referring to mighty men who were fallen and aborted their own children. Nephilim could mean mighty men, fallen ministers, and aborters all interchangeably. And it all fits. It isn't just the Hebrew that reveals this wordplay. The same word in Greek, ektroma, meaning an abortive birth, is used 3 times in the Greek Septuagint Old Testament, and every time it refers to a baby that has died. Like Numbers 12:12, the flesh is half consumed when he cometh out of his mother's womb, and Job 3:16, an untimely birth, and Ecclesiastes 6:3, an untimely birth. When Paul compares himself to an ektroma in his letter to the Corinthians, he isn't saying he is a giant, like he can squash houses with his heel, or that he lives on top of a beanstalk. Paul is here referring to Job. Paul is comparing himself to an infant which never saw light. That's Corinthians 5:8. Unlike the other apostles, Paul never saw Jesus in his mortal ministry. In a sense, he is like an aborted child who never saw light. Properly translated, the word Nephilim refers to the global epidemic of abortions in the days before Noah, and does not refer to mythologically tall humanoid monsters. Then why do the records say that the Nephilim were the children of the Watchers? Genesis says the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bear children to them. Clearly, they are children being born to them, right? Actually, no. The original Hebrew text omits the word children. The The text originally said, Ayalad lechem, which simply means, they bear to them. The King James translator merely added the word children because they assumed they must be bearing something. Perhaps the idea of mass infanticide was beyond their imagination. In fact, the Greek Septuagint reads quite differently than the Hebrew, saying, I wish I knew how to pronounce Greek, because I'd love to read that. Or in English, after that, the sons of God were entering the daughters of men and conceiving unto themselves. In the original languages, there's plenty of sex and plenty of conceiving, but nothing is born. The Kebra Nagast just says it plainly. The daughters of Cain were unable to bring forth their children. The Manichaean documents aren't subtle at all about this. Abortion is the obvious abomination. In his description of the Manichaean traditions regarding the Nephilim, Theodore Bar Konai reports of pregnant female Benot Ha'adam, or children of men, whose fetuses abort. The prophet Jeremiah uses the word abomination in referring to the people who caused their sons and daughters to pass through the fire unto Molech. The author of Kings says passing a son through the fire is according to the abominations of the heathen. The sons of Seth apparently didn't need Molech and fire and all of that, because it's never mentioned in the antediluvian texts. But through some kind of alchemy, the sons of Seth introduced infanticide to the world. Less fiery, but just as abominable. Again, playing on the word to fall, the Genesis Rabbah says, the Nephilim, as they fell from the world, managed to fill the world with abortions, with their immorality. Sorry to disappoint, but there were no lumbering, drooling, club-wielding giants gobbling up little girls like popcorn chicken. There was no fee-fi-fo-fum. They were regular-sized dudes, mighty, once holy, fallen, and apparently handsome, but just man-sized dudes. Sorry to all the teenage boys out there who just lost much of their interest in the Bible study. Giants weren't real? Nuts, I hate this book. The fallen sons of God think they had found a loophole. Now they can enjoy adultery with whomever they wished, with no fear of incidentally having children. Mankind is losing the ability to reproduce, and Satan is building his kingdom on the blood of innocents. Joseph Smith Jr.'s revelation describes this evil time. Their works were abominations and began to spread among all the sons of men. Yet the Lord doesn't send the flood. Things have to get worse still. The end of all flesh. Obviously, Satan is loving things right now, but how is everybody else okay with this? Where are the men and women who care about their progeny? Don't they care who inherits the earth after them? Well, funny thing, actually, no, they don't. In fact, that's precisely why they embrace mass abortion and sterilization. The sons of Seth thought they'd steal the earth. By whatever means, perhaps their enchantments or potions, or somehow using the knowledge from the holy mountain, the Watchers and their kind hoped to live an eternal life. One Middle Persian fragment of the Book of the Giants chides the sons of heaven. In error you thought you would wield this false power eternally. The abortionists boast of their leader's manliness in powerful tyranny. He shall not die. They are convinced they will live eternally, for in the whole world in power and strength, and they have no equal. Perhaps this is why the selfish sons of Seth were without affection and hated their own blood. Their own offspring were competition for inheriting the earth. But they didn't hate everyone's blood. Worse than being competition, their children were a means to lengthening their life. The Romans used to dash into... I just had a very peculiar thought. and one that stuck out to me just now. In college, when I was taking a class about speech writing, because I figured it was an easy A, which it was for me, we were given a task to defend a concept we didn't agree with, which was fun, because that way it gave you the idea of, hey, research the other side so you can make your own arguments better. What was fascinating is one of the students, I can't remember what I did it on, but one of the other students gave a presentation on stem cell research. He really loved the idea of stem cell research, and he loved the possibilities that it afforded. But at the time, since it was just barely coming into the news, there was a lot of controversy around it because a lot of the studies were focusing on the stem cells from babies, specifically abortions, and how great they were because of all the potential that they could have. And so he was all about this. I can't remember if he had someone in his family or something that suffered from a degenerative disease, so he was hopeful about this, or maybe he was just affected by some sort of disease at some point, and that's why he was interested in it. But he took the position that he didn't agree with, which was that adult stem cells work just as fine and have proven worth compared to infant stem cell research. And he was blown away because that proved to be true. Using your own stem cells from yourself as an adult, they've already done tests with it and have had results. The only reason they were pushing stem cell research through infants, specifically aborted infants, was because of the potential. It's all about the potential, stem cell research. Because they could, take the stem cells of infants where all those cells haven't fully been assigned yet and possibly apply them anywhere and everywhere. Because they're in your cells, apparently. I'm not a biologist, but here's what I understand. In your cells, apparently, when your cells specialize, like they are made to be bone cells, they specialize into making bones and bone marrow and such, or they become gut cells or skin cells, or they become liver cells, or whatever they specialize in. They then turn off the code for everything else besides what's needed for what they've specialized in. And stem cells are the idea that they're the cells that are original, basically, the ones before they've been turned off to specialization. And they've found ways to take regular cells from the regular areas of the body and turn them back into the full genetic blueprint to be able to be applied anywhere kind of deal. Now, I may be getting that part wrong, but the idea is that you can then take them to help repair things that are having issue anywhere because you have the full blueprint. So, sorry, the reason I paused was when it basically said, but they didn't hate everyone's blood. Worse than being competition, their children were a means to lengthening their life. That reminded me of the stem cell research. And I remember it being pushed hard back in the early, it would have been 2010s. I have no idea where it's at now. Like a lot of technology and research articles, they make a big splash and then they just go quiet for a long time. And either that means that the study has gone under or people are doing their research. But there's just no more articles about it because it's not the hot new cool thing in technology and science. The Romans used to dash into the arena after a gladiator fight to drink the blood of the fallen warriors. They thought this draught of life would cure diseases and imbue strength and vitality. Louis XV of France was believed to require a bath in human blood, and there being no blood purer than that of children. His footnote for that is Fargy, page 105. Charles II of England drank blood too. So allegedly did Pope Innocent the Eighth. Ironic name, anybody? So that's Charlier, page 847, and Gottlieb, page 228 to 235 for those accusations, so that you know he's going to sources. Don't forget that Cain allegedly drank Abel's blood to kick off this whole mess. The Ethiopian eunuch reports that the watchers indeed drank the blood. That's 1 Enoch 7:1 of other men as a means of extending their lives. The watchers could have used births for a source of blood. It is specifically the lust for blood that prompts Genesis. Joseph and Jubilees to say that every man was lifted up in the imagination of the thoughts of his heart, being only evil continually. Jubilees ties this bloodlust to vanity. Imagine that drinking the blood of your own children will give you extended life. It's a warped kind of self-worship. If you imagine that you couldn't die and you couldn't have children, then what was left but to sin? You'll never meet your maker, right? Especially if you kill all your enemies first. Then why restrain yourself carnally? Nothing is off the table. Not even the most taboo acts are forbidden. And speaking of the most taboo, this unholy combination of sterilization, perceived immortality, and hyperhedonism next leads to mass incest. I know, it's dark. Let's get this over with quickly. According to the Book of Cave of Treasures, incest becomes rampant. The old women were more lascivious than the maidens. Fathers and sons defiled themselves with their mothers and sisters. Sons respected not even their own fathers, and fathers made no distinction between their sons and other men. Jeez. The Book of the Mysteries of Heaven and Earth from Ge'ez also described the familial bonds disintegrated as fathers no longer recognized their sons, nor their sons their fathers. The New Testament authors knew about this, as Jude refers to the antediluvians as giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh. Really? The New Testament authors had this stuff? Did they have it as apocryphal books? But those just weren't included in the Bible? Really makes a lot of commandments that were given very understanding and clear. And this is where I'm sitting here thinking about there's a lot of mythical tales tied to this. Vampires, Kronos for the Greeks, devouring his children, literally before Zeus steps up and guts Kronos and delivers the other great Greek god leader people. Oh, jeez. It's all over. There's so many myths that are all over that tie back to this time. Wow. All right. Jude quotes the apocryphal that's where it comes from. So it is, Jude quotes the apocryphal Ethiopian eunuch when he calls their deeds the works of ungodliness. The Egyptian apocryphal text, The Second Life of Adam and Eve, describes how ungodly this got sometimes. Then when they were drunk, hatred and murder increased among them. One man used violence against another to teach him evil, taking his children and defiling them before him. In a stomach-turning passage, the Apocrypha of John says that if the sons of Seth did have children, it was for their enjoyment. The reconstructed story of the antediluvians starts to defy belief. How could this happen? To indulge a little bit of speculation, if the people lived for centuries, then logically the parents would overlap their children for centuries. Could a 550-year-old be physically distinguished from a 500-year-old? With no prohibitive physical differences between parents and children and no risk of having offspring, perhaps this is how the taboo of incest somehow faded away. A lust-soaked society may take full advantage. Do we need to dwell more on this? Let's move on. No wonder one of the first things the Lord resolves to do the next time around is to shorten lifespans. Genesis 6:3, Jasher 7:20, and Joseph all record creation's second round adjustment. And the Lord said unto Noah, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for he shall know that all flesh shall die, yet his days shall be 120 years. Moses 8:17. The Lord gives his reason, saying that man shall know that all flesh shall die. Josephus says the shortening of lifespans was a reaction to the chaos brought on by longer lives. Quote, Now God determined to destroy the whole race of mankind, and to make another race that should be pure from wickedness, and cutting short their lives and making their years not so many as they formerly lived, but 120 only. That's from Antiquities. The whole trouble started with crazy long lifespans. In the future, God would nip that in the bud. Critics have long blamed Eve for bringing death into the world, but apparently she didn't bring enough death into the world. Just take a look at the chaos that comes from delusions of immortality. With the second draft of creation, the Lord wants a little more of fear and trembling. As Joseph Smith Jr. taught, all men know that they must die. Previously, a man could be born and live centuries without seeing anyone ever naturally die. Now the Lord would get straight to the point. Welcome to earth, repent now because you're going to die real soon. None of this languish around and getting yourself into more and more trouble stuff. The Lord already knew this was trouble when he wanted to stop Adam and Eve from living forever in their sins. Amidst all this devilry and revelry, the Lord tries to right the ship by sending a terrible famine. Joseph correctly reveals that there came forth a great famine into the land, and the Lord cursed the earth with a sore curse, and many of the inhabitants died. The book of Jasher corroborates Joseph, explaining that the Lord destroyed the seed in those days, that there was neither sowing nor reaping in the earth. Another apocryphal Greek retelling says that the famine was the result of a terrible drought in which the Lord withheld every cloud and mist and dew and rain because of their sins. You know, that's a repeated motif. I'm sorry, the physics science side of me is like, how does he do that? I'm really curious, because that's been brought up in other scriptures as well. And he's got to be really good at that. And I guess they were over the face of the whole earth as well. Like, that's pretty amazing. Like, I can understand local famines. I can understand local droughts. Because it always bugs me so much that here in the western United States, you got a ton of drought and dryness, and yet there's floods back east. Whereas, 20 years ago, it was plenty of rain, plenty of snow here, and dryness elsewhere. It's just everything shifts over time. I know there's some people that are out there like, it's climate change. Well, yeah, the climate always changes. That's true. I'm not going to distinguish that, but at the same time, sometimes there are other things in the work too. I just love to know his mechanism for doing that. Anyways, sadly, God's overtures fail. The people know full well the Lord is trying to humble them, and they refuse to do that. Oh, man. In the Greek version, the prophet Enoch tells the wicked, fear him. If he closes the window of heaven and hinders the dew from the rain and the rain from descending because of you, what will you do? That's 1 Enoch. But in response, the wicked are defiant. We do not need the drop of thy rain, neither to walk in thy ways. And this is what I worry about. Because we have enough technology that we can desalinate water and do all sorts of things to get water from the air. So, when so little food was produced, That meant big trouble later on. Noah is urged by the prophet to abide in this cave all the days of thy life, and feed thy people in righteousness and innocence. It's no surprise that the starving people robbed and plundered every man his neighbor as well as his relative. The Ethiopian eunuch says these men afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth and cause trouble. At the center of this sit the fallen sons of Seth. They had previously covenanted to be servants and ministers, but they forgot that long ago. With famine pushing everyone to desperation, they think only of themselves. The Ethiopian eunuch account says the Nephilim consumed all the acquisitions of men, and when they could no longer sustain them, the Nephilim turned against them and devoured mankind, and they began to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. That makes a lot more sense. And they have something similar like that, and them talking about giants drinking. Oh, God. Starvation becomes robbery, which becomes murder, which becomes cannibalism. The next verse testifies to the evil of the fallen sons and the plight of their victims. And as men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven. The last great abomination that formerly holy sons of God perpetrated is the most mysterious. The book of Joshua reports that the sons of men in those days took from the cattle of the earth, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the air, and taught the mixture of animals of one species, with the other. The Kebra Nagast describes that they introduced the seed of the ass to the mare, and the mule came into being, which God had not commanded. The Dead Sea Scrolls cryptically describe that they took 200 donkeys and asses, 200 rams and goats, 200 of the beasts of the field, including various types of animals and birds, for the purpose of mixing species. Eventually, the entire earth was corrupted by this blood. The experiments were called monsters. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, the flesh of all the monsters, they would always arise without true understanding and knowledge, and the earth grew so corrupt they were considering, but in the end it would always perish and die. It caused even greater corruption in the earth. They were manipulating genes. I mean, maybe not like in a lab, but they were doing what was always done with genetic manipulation at first, which is just selective breeding. But they were breeding crossbreeds like the mule. The Ethiopian eunuch seems to indicate this too, and they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish. The Book of the Giants cryptically hints at this, like a horror movie trailer. In the text below, the ellipses are placed where the scroll was torn or ineligible, but the general idea comes through. Don't read this just before going to bed. Good thing it's the morning. It can haunt you all day. Quote, blank. They knew the secrets of blank. Sin was great in the earth, blank. And they killed many, blank. They begat giants, blank. Everything that the earth produced, blank. The great fish, blank. The sky with all that grew, blank. Fruit of the earth and all kinds of grain, and all the trees, blank. Beasts and reptiles, blank. All creeping things of the earth, and they observed all, blank. Every harsh deed and utterance, male and female, and among humans, 200 donkeys, 200 asses, 200 rams of the flock, 200 goats, 200 beasts of the field, from every animal, from every bird, for miscegenation. Oh, dang it. Is this that word again that I got totally wrong? Miscegenation. For miscegenation. That's the one where they were basically inbreeding. They defiled. They begot giants and monsters. They begot, and behold, all the earth was corrupted. The Kebra Nagast also accuses mankind of introducing the seed of one animal into another, in greatness of their filthiness. That reminds me of a bunch of gene splicing that we're doing, like making little rats glow from the glowing ability of jellyfish. And other stuff like that. In greatness of their filthiness, still sounding spookily vague, the Nagast tells man wrought pollution with man, and woman worked with woman the abominable thing. The children of Cain always walked in the counsel of the devil, who maketh evil to flourish. The book of Jubilees describes God's hope that eventually man should not sin in their whole nature forever, but should be all righteous, each in his kind alway. This harkens back to the Lord's pronouncement at creation that each animal is to reproduce after its kind. God creates, quote, the fruit of the tree yielding fruit after his kind, and the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good, and God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle, and creeping thing, and beast of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the emphasis was added after his kind in every time that it was brought up. We get it. We get it. Save some ink. Why is Genesis going on and on about keeping species separated? Because Jehovah is reeling from the antediluvian experiments. The author of Genesis has some PTSD from the pre-flood days, when the watchers were forcing things to reproduce outside of its own kind. Just to be clear, no one has a sure idea what this interspecies mixing really means. The texts are just disjointed and unclear. Some people have tried connecting this with modern scientific genetic modification, but what you read is basically all that is said about it. We're not going to go diving into DNA chimeras and monsters. Whew. 173. However, Joseph Smith totally killed all the werewolves. Google it. So, Joseph Smith killed all the werewolves? Oh, is this like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer? Oh, jeez. That's hilarious. An alternate, or perhaps parallel interpretation, is that the sin against the beast has to do with bestiality. The Ethiopic Book of Mysteries of Heaven and Earth says eerily that even animals strayed from their natural paths. Humanity's sin extends to bestiality. The Old Slavonic Book of Enoch hints at this as well, warning that whosoever defiles the soul of beasts defiles his own soul, and he who does any beast any injury whatsoever in secret, it is evil practice, and he defiles his own soul. Is this a warning against animal abuse or something darker? All of this is fuzzy and cryptic and gross, but the results are the important part. In Genesis, God looks down and sees all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. When Enoch pronounces judgment upon the sons of Seth, he mentions every living being and all flesh. The Lord calls this time the days of slaughter and destruction and death. That's First Enoch. Genesis had actually been saying this all along. The abomination of the antediluvians was ending the human race, and probably plenty of animals too. Hence the Lord lamenting, the end of all flesh is come before me. Genesis 6:13. For whatever reason, the Bible readers have always taken this to mean the Lord has resolved to end all flesh. Like, this party sucks. I'm taking my ball and going home. But God is not acting in this sentence. The original Hebrew is pretty straightforward. The end is the subject and has come before God's face, his panim. This isn't an abstract thought God is having. It is what God is witnessing happen. The antediluvians have managed to end the propagation of life on earth. God is witnessing the end of all flesh before his face. Sorry. A lot of things are coming to mind right now. In review, the slimy sons of Seth managed to accomplish a lot. Not only did they break their oaths and forsake their ministries and their own families, but they committed adultery with the women, tricked them into abortions, killed their own children, spread sterilization and abortion to the world, robbed, plundered, murdered, raped, inaugurated a pandemic of incest, eliminated reproduction, capped the human population, mixed species of animals together unnaturally, dabbled in bestiality, and threw everyone into cannibalism, and they never used their turn blinkers. Okay, they didn't have cars, but you just know that these are the kind of guys who wouldn't have used their blinkers. I would add, they never returned their shopping carts to the alley. The Dead Sea Scrolls testify that these once pure men became sinful misbegotten sons of the wrathful self, confounders of the true words of that Holy One, disturbers of the actions of good deed, aggressors upon piety. The Slavonic Enoch has zero chill with these guys, calling them those who dishonor God, who on earth practice sin against nature, which is child corruption after the sodomistic fashion, magic-making enchantments, and devilish witchcrafts, and who boast of their wicked deeds, stealing, lies, calumnies, envy, rancor, fornication, murder. That's 2nd Enoch. The Genesis Rabbah also agrees with Joseph, saying that the presence of God was driven away thanks to the sons of Seth, which the Rabbah refers to as generations of Enos, Seth's sons. The light, when first created, would have enabled men to see from one corner of the earth to the other, but the wicked men of the generation of Enos caused the light to be withdrawn from this world. Genesis Rabbah. Remember what got us into this mess in the first place. Joseph said was a time when Satan raged in the hearts of men. While the Bible said everything was peachy, Joseph also pinpointed the exact time it all went wrong. The apocryphal book of Enoch in the Hebrew says that Seth's sons, Enos or Enosh, was the head of all idol worshippers of the world. Ooh. Joseph Smith Jr. guessed the answer right when the world was still wondering what the question was. Joseph is that guy who jumps up after 2 rounds and says, "It was Colonel Mustard in the parlor with the candlestick." Holy crap, Joseph, at least let me finish counting my cards first. Joseph was right to correct the biblical record, and he got it spot on without the help of any of these apocryphal texts. Truly, Satan had great dominion among men, no matter what the theologians say to try to patch the gaping holes in the traditional narrative. The antediluvians were just living out the summer of 69. They weren't just living out the summer of 69. They were short-circuiting God's plan. Joseph's nephew later revealed that even before they were born, they, with many others, received their first lessons in the world of spirits and were prepared to come forth in the due time of the Lord. That comes from Doctrine and Covenants 138:56. So he's talking about Joseph F. Smith and the Revelation and Doctrine and Covenants about the pre-earth life and post-earth life stuff. They received their first lessons. Knowledge of the predestined glory of families solves the greatest riddle of the Bible. Joseph puts all these pieces into place at once. The premortality of spirits, the critical importance of fertility, and subsequently the unspeakable wickedness of the antediluvians. The modern apostle, Elder Packer, once said, "There is no way to make sense out of life without a knowledge of the doctrine of premortal life. When we understand the doctrine of premortal life, then things fit together and make sense." Similarly, there is no way to make sense of the great flood without a knowledge of the plan. Satan and the antediluvians went to unspeakably evil lengths to stop the pipeline between the premortal and mortal realm. Myriad texts pop up in support of Joseph's claim. 1. The sons of God is an earned title used since the beginning. Once watchers, the sons of Seth followed the example of Cain, bound each other in oaths, secret works, and works of darkness to turn horribly wicked, super duper wicked, like holy crap, hurry up with the flood already wicked, that they wanted to prevent the birth of the Messiah through Eve. And the only way to save mankind was by flooding the earth. For how many centuries did theologians dig at this problem, and only dig themselves deeper? Joseph swats their creeds away like flies. Joseph is like the rhinoceros in a shop filled with porcelain creeds, inside glass walls of atheist academia floating on the inflatable raft of biblical sufficiency. Lehi's brass Genesis preserved the truth about premortality. This is why Alma can say that men were prepared from the foundation of the world according to the foreknowledge of God. The birds of the Apocrypha perch happily on the back of Joseph's revelatory rhinoceros. They all agree that Adam and Eve were the righteous ones, while the generation of Enos, the sons of Seth, are wicked ones. The innocent are being devoured, and only the puppets of Satan are left. Every last one of them was corrupted, except for this one kid. Chapter 6, Enoch 0. And that is the QR code if you need it. But, oh, dude. Now we're going to get to Enoch. Here I thought it would have been Noah, but yeah, Enoch is apparently the kid, and Noah is the reset. Dude, I think we're right. Okay, we are right in the middle of this book. Good God. Oh! That makes a whole lot more sense. A whole lot more sense. I think my curiosity is where the corruption happened. Where did they start taking this stuff out? Because if Jude quotes from Enoch, the book of Enoch, the Ethiopian Enoch, then they had this stuff in the New Testament time, but it just wasn't added into the Old Testament Genesis stuff, which makes me wonder that, okay, if it was taken out of the Old Testament Genesis stuff, but it still survived, I wonder if it's that's kind of like the scripture stuff you put at the back of the book until the children are a bit older, and that the priests of, I don't know, there's a lot that I want to lay on the shoulder of the priests during the time of Lehi and Jeremiah, the time of the Great Forsakening, when they rearranged how the temple was done, and when they rearranged things to be as monotheistic as possible by ripping out the concept of a heavenly family. I think they would have ripped out the information about the Messiah in the Genesis then. I think they would have, and in that case, they would have changed a lot of the stories then. Because if they have to rip out the Messiah, which is kind of central to the Adam and Eve theme, good golly. Oof. This is an interesting thing. The concept of forbidden knowledge. Like you have, like if you're a Harry Potter fan, you remember in the library they had the section that was under security that, you know, when they opened the book itself screamed, kind of deal. The idea of forbidden knowledge, that this knowledge is out there, but it doesn't want to be known. And the reason why is because sometimes just by knowing the knowledge, it changes you. Or just by knowing the knowledge. That's one set of forbidden knowledge, is that as soon as you have the knowledge, it does not go away. What is seen cannot be unseen, kind of stuff. And then there's another set of forbidden knowledge, which is that in some ways it would be good and important to know to avoid it. But other people take that as a plan of action. And in some ways, I'm wondering if that's kind of what this is, because they talked about secret combinations. And heck, even in Genesis, the original Genesis that we have, well, what I mean is the King James Version Genesis, because that's not the original. So the King James Version Genesis, even they talk about basically secret combinations, but just barely, those secret works of darkness and murdering to get gain, and between Cain and Lamech. But Book of Mormon harps on it a lot. And then it doesn't really show up in the Bible afterwards. But the Book of Mormon certainly takes that and runs with it. But you can see that in the Old Testament, especially in the commandments part, because I need to go back to Leviticus. I can't wait. I can't wait to compare all the commandments that Moses gave and how it compares to what the heck the antediluvians were doing. You can see that probably a lot of them stem from this. If Moses saw all that and he's like, this is a no-go zone, you just don't do that, you gotta, now we know why. You know, and atheists love to put that up and talk about how intolerant Christians are, because it talks about, you know, stone people who engage in bestiality, or heck, even stoning people. I think it was stoning people who have unnatural relationships or gay relationships. And they're like, see how ruthless and evil he is? And it's like, you don't, now that we have these stories, it's like, you don't understand the plan, do you? You don't understand how bad this can get. Because we don't. We don't. We don't know how bad it could get. If we didn't have these stories, we just sit there and say, well, you know, it's only 10% of the population at most. It can get worse and quick. And we've seen that. God, we've seen that. The acceleration of just absolute, literal craziness that goes against literal, physical, objective reality. People deciding that they want to be animals and more. It takes away from objective reality. Look, people can choose a lot of things, but the explosion, how quick in children that it grew in the past decade is staggering. And you just want to go, guys, there's a better way. That's it. Just there's a better way. But with these stories that warn how bad it can get, I think there's, well, I hope it stays that way. I hope there's enough people who go, yeah, okay, you do you. We encourage you to please, you know, you may want to face the realities of the world, that families are the best thing because it has a father and a mother and stability, and it just is generally the good pattern to follow. And if you choose to do otherwise, it's not going to be that pattern, and so it will have its troubles and struggles. And so please don't go down that route. It probably will not give you happiness. We'll continue to say that all the time. But I just hope it doesn't take on that evil edge, that terrible evil edge of forcing it on other people. I hope it does not come to that, and I hope it does not come to the point where people don't have choices, because it seems to have been a repeat in Sodom and Gomorrah. You know, I hope there's enough good people out there to sit there and say, thank you, we don't want to do that, and that's fine, and if you want to, go ahead and you do that over there, and we'll be over here, and we'll be fine. But as soon as you start forcing people, in either direction, you got war. And war is never good. But gosh, it's weird. It's weird because once you have these stories, once Jonah's shared this stuff, you sit there and look around at the stuff going on today, and you're like, how bad can it get Well, apparently it can get a lot worse. How do you fight against that? You just don't be a part of it. Got to be like Enoch. You got to be like Noah. Got to be like the people who would, I mean, that gets really bad if it goes down to just Noah. But if you think about it, I don't think it will get that bad from all these different prophecies and other things, especially like in the Book of Mormon, the allegory of the olive tree. You get the idea that it'll get bad, sure, but it won't get like overwhelmingly force the world to be evil and sterilization, and like it's here. We have sterilization, we have abortion, we have the alternative lifestyles all around us. It's here, and the genie's out of the bottle. Tain't going back the other way, not unless there's some huge reset. But at the same time, not everyone's jumping on board, and that's a good thing. And the more that people go, yeah, I think families are the better way to go, I think people will be better off. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people that, the stories that my kids tell me as they come home from public school make me believe that we're in trouble. when you have kids that are just vulgar in more than just language, but in attitude, in dress, in jokes, and that they are unthoughtful of the world. They're just unaware of the world and its implications. They just follow lockstep with what their teachers teach them. And what the teachers teach them is false information. For example, my daughter was talking to me about how Christopher Columbus was being taught, and it was with all the false accusations that go around about Christopher Columbus because of places like Vox and liberal stuff. And I was just like, no, dearie, let's get you the truth. Let's get you the original sources. Let's find you people who can digest all that for you and present it to you right here. And so I tuned my daughter into Thoughtful Faith with Jacob Hansen about Christopher Columbus. He has a 3-part series. It's really great. And he explains, here's the things where he did go wrong. Here's what Columbus is accused of. But the reality is, it's the exact opposite of what he's accused of. He was the one trying to stop those things from happening, and it was his detractors that were trying to get rid of him so they could continue to doing all the things that is terrible. It's fascinating. I think propagation of these ideas, especially among the youth, is insidious. I think it's trying to raise a generation that is like the children of Enosh, the children of Seth, that it's like, why? You should be able to do anything that you want. It always makes me wonder why, though. Like, what is their end game? Like, in the end, those guys knew what they were doing, and they knew that they were trying to, they wanted to just indulge in their sins. And then on top of it, then the wheels keep turning because Satan's there, and he's like, hey, you can stop this whole thing, and all of this can be yours. And so they kind of like knowingly were trying to throw a spanner into the works of God, and 'twasn't going to happen. So at the same time, like, the rise of this same kind of stuff now, it's not as militant, it's not as rampant, at least for now, thankfully. But it makes me wonder, it could turn on a dime, and I hope not. I really hope not. I hope it never will. I think that would be an atrocity, but it's already, the world has turned on a dime within 20 years from the early 2000s to now. Within 20 years, the world has turned on a dime, and the generation that has been raised up is one that is wholly ignorant and staggeringly, like, when my youngest daughter, she reads okay, but I can tell she's not as good of a reader because she just hasn't done it as much. But even she's being told that she's an advanced reader compared to a lot of other students. And my middle daughter, they're saying, you need to be in honors English, and you read like an adult. And I'm like, she reads really well, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, I'm like, if that's considered to be an adult, what's happened to the literacy of everyone? Anyway, sorry. There's my doomsaying. Hey, the kids these days, it's the music they listen to. It's the where in my day we didn't have this stuff. Yeah, we did. I was just in a bubble, and thankfully so I didn't have to deal with this every day. People have dealt with this same stuff for 4 generations. It's always been around. It's just been on the hush hush, the down low, the taboo, the forbidden. But nowadays it's just running rampant, and so it's socially. I worry that it could become militant at some point, and I hope it never does. I hope no one becomes militant about any of their own beliefs. I think love and conversation and convincing is the best way. But yeah. These stories are pretty crazy, man. It's going to haunt you all day. I hope you have fun. Yeah, I hope you enjoy it. We'll see ya.